They were high school sweethearts, raising 4 beautiful children.
They were together over 20 years.
She just wanted a family.
My mom was like our superhero.
But her story has a tragic end.
Everything was good, and then my mom's gone.
It looked like there'd been a struggle.
There's a lot of blood.
As the investigation begins, the mystery deepens.
She had placed a call to 911.
She knew something was gonna happen to her.
Jealousy can bring out the darkest parts in people.
I remember hearing her saying, like, I'm as good as dead.
August 29th, 2011, 5:15 a.m. It's a quiet Monday morning in Longwood, Florida, a small suburban town just 30 minutes north of Orlando.
A lot of it was very rural for a long time, but it's not that way anymore. It's more of a bedroom community. A lot of the people here work in Orlando.
This was not a high-crime area.
It's a nice place to live.
It's a wonderful community. It has more of a communal feel. It feels more of home.
Over on the west side of town, Jim Matthews spots his colleague pulling up.
Jim was waiting for his coworker to get there.
On a minute. What's going on? Hey.
They both were working together in Tampa, so they would meet there and one of them would drive to Tampa while the other one's car would sit there. It was a typical carpooling situation.
As the two begin their morning commute to work, they make a startling discovery.
Yo, stop the car!
They look over to the side and they see somebody, so they figure, well, this person might be hurt. So they will go and investigate.
Being good Samaritans, they just wanted to go check it out and see if the individual's okay.
Hey, miss, you okay? Oh, God.
As they got closer, they noticed there was a pool of blood.
Hey, man, call 911.
They were somewhat in a panic or shocked, as any of us would be, but they knew that they needed help.
Yeah, what's your police paramedical?
Yes, ma'am. We have a person laying on the ground with blood around their head.
Police are on the scene within minutes, but they're too late.
When first responders arrive at the scene, they realize very quickly that this lady is beyond help.
She was gone.
It was obvious that this was a very horrific crime that had occurred.
There was a lot of trauma to her face and head.
But that's not all.
She was sprawled out, legs somewhat spread, naked from the waist down.
The state of the victim's clothes leads police to believe she could be the target of a gruesome sexual assault. But who is she?
She didn't have identification, and there was no sign of her purse or wallet in the car either.
Instead, it's the car itself that offers deputies their first clue about the woman's identity.
Once they were able to run that, they learned that the car was registered to a woman named Sarah Rucker.
18-year-old Sarah Rucker always had a knack for connecting with people.
She was always happy. Everybody wanted to be around her. She made everybody laugh. Had a bunch of friends.
My mom was very bubbly. She was goofy, funny, but feisty at the same time. She was only 4'11", but you would think she was 6 foot with how much confidence and sass she had.
There was one man who'd always found Sarah's sass to be attractive. Her high school sweetheart, Dwayne White, also known as Wayne.
Sarah and Wayne were young when they met. That was her first serious relationship.
They was good. They was always joking together, always having a good time.
Though like Sarah, he'd also known hard times.
Wayne had a difficult childhood. His father had left the home early in his life, and he was raised by a single mother.
After graduation, Sarah and Wayne took their relationship to the next level.
They moved together, and she got pregnant with her first child.
Looks okay. But I have a screw left.
You know it comes with instructions, right?
It kind of just happened. So she had me, and then she had my brother right after me. She made my brother a year and a day apart. He was like, okay, I guess we're doing this family thing.
In 1998, Sarah gave birth to the couple's third child, and a fourth followed 1 year later.
She was happy, very excited. She always wanted a family.
Motherhood came easy for Sarah.
She was a great mother. Her kids loved her, She gave them anything they wanted. Spent a lot of time with them.
She was the best mom that anyone asked for. She was the go-to mom, the down-to-earth mom. I was never afraid to go to her with anything.
By 2001, Sarah and Wayne still hadn't tied the knot, but their relationship seemed stronger than ever.
There was a lot of love.
The couple shared responsibilities at home, and Wayne took an active role in helping raise the children.
He took pride in taking care of us. He was a very, very good cook. He was the one that was doing the majority of the cooking. He was very funny. My friends, they liked him because he was real personable as well. My dad had a big imagination. He wanted a lot for himself. He had aspirations to be this big person, this money maker. He wanted to be more, and he always told us that we could be more and do more.
Though providing for a family of 6 was no easy task.
In the early 2000s, he worked for waste management as a garbage man, and then after that, he was, I guess, hustling.
He did a lot of general work, like just laboring work,
To make ends meet, Sarah took a waitressing job at a local restaurant.
She's definitely a people person, so she liked being around people, and, she got good tips.
To help provide for her family, Sarah decided to enroll at a local college.
I remember she was always studying.
She had a mindset on it. I don't know how she did it, but she did it.
The hard work paid off, and Sarah earned her certification as a surgical technician. Before long, she landed a good-paying job at a suburban Orlando hospital.
The people there became like her family. Everyone loved her there, and she loved them.
In 2007, Sarah and Wayne decided to make their 20-year romance official.
The day that they got married, my dad was just like, we have a surprise for y'all. And we're like, what's the surprise? She's like, we just went to the courthouse and got married.
Soon after, the family moved out to the Orlando suburb of Deltona.
It's literally just houses, 2 high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, and we have a Walmart.
Seemed like they was happy to me because they was doing pretty good for themselves.
Sarah had even more reason to be happy in August of 2011.
The couple's daughter, Kira, had enrolled at Florida A&M University and was following in her mother's footsteps as a pharmacy major because she, too, wanted to help people in the medical profession.
Education was very important to my mom. She always said that you had to do your best in school. There's no limit to how much you know. You can't know. Knowledge is power.
And on the night of August 28th, Sarah was over the moon with pride.
It was actually the night before my first day of classes, and she was telling me, get some sleep, you got classes in the morning, I love you, talk to you tomorrow.
But that was the last time Sarah would ever speak to her daughter.
At 5:15 the following morning, 2 commuters found a dead body in a Longwood, Florida parking lot.
She had suffered tremendous injuries to her neck area. There was, I believe, at least 11 slice marks where her throat was cut.
Law enforcement was not quite sure whether this was some type of random mugging or attack, or whether this might have been some type of targeted killing.
When you look at the severity of the injuries, you would think more that it's targeted.
Whoever did this was a monster, and they needed to be found immediately.
Mother of 4, Sarah Rucker, was honored that her daughter planned on following in her footsteps.
Her eldest daughter was starting her first day at college, and Sarah was so proud of her.
The night before, she told me she loved me and everything, wishing me luck and everything, told me to call her.
But on the morning of August 29th, 2011, officers in Longwood, Florida respond to a brutal homicide that will turn Sarah's family upside down.
There's a pool of blood. It looks like there's a savage attack.
They were able to ascertain that the car belonged to a woman named Sarah Rucker. They were not sure yet that the person who had died was Sarah Rucker, but it was a start.
Within moments, detectives arrive on the scene. As they look around, they discover what appears to be defensive wounds on the victim's hands.
When somebody's defending themselves from a knife attack, they tend to grab the knife. Trying to grab the hand, they grab the knife, and they get slice marks on their fingers. And she had those. And you have to be aware of what's happening in order to get that aggravator and show somebody was defending themselves in a fight for their lives.
The wounds suggest she had fought desperately with her attacker. And the blood-soaked pavement gives detectives a crucial clue about when the murder occurred.
It was obvious she had not been dead for days, but the first thing I would think they would probably determine whether the body was dumped there or whether the crime was committed there.
The blood was still tacky and hadn't dried completely. She had only been dead about 1 or 2 hours.
Finally, blood spatter around the body tells detectives they're looking at the scene of the crime, not just a dumped body.
When people are attacked and blood is being cast from the body by force, and when you see those patterns, you can tell that that's where the event is actually happening, as opposed to a body's left there. You typically have drag marks, just pooling blood.
One important piece of evidence is missing, however.
What law enforcement could not find that morning was the murder weapon.
While crime scene technicians begin processing the scene, detectives question the 2 men who found the body.
But at that point, they hadn't exonerated those 2. They wanted an opportunity to be able to speak to both men, to figure out what they knew.
How long were you here before your friend showed up?
Maybe 5 minutes, 10 at most.
You didn't notice the body?
No, it was behind the car.
Did you see anyone else besides your friend when you got here this morning?
No, we didn't even notice the body till right when we was about to pull off the lot.
So, nothing suspicious that you can recall?
No, honestly, it just looked like somebody left their car there overnight.
While neither of the men are able to provide detectives with much information, detectives do rule them out as suspects.
Neither of these men had any blood on them, and they wouldn't have had any time to clean up or anything like that.
I never got the sense that they were suspicious of those guys. Just the fact that they called the police. People who commit crimes like this don't typically call the police. It's not what's done through my experience.
These were just good Samaritans. They didn't see anything that had happened. They just happened to stumble across this grisly crime scene.
With no witnesses to the crime itself, the detective's next step is to determine if the owner of the car is in fact their victim. Is this woman Sarah Rucker?
If Sarah was their victim, they needed to try and figure out what she was doing in a restaurant parking lot so early in the morning.
In the initial moments of the investigation, law enforcement was not quite sure what they had on their hands yet.
As detectives begin looking into Sarah Rucker, over on the north side of town, Sarah's colleagues start to get worried.
Holly Long and Casey Bennett worked at the hospital with Sarah and noticed she'd missed her shift that morning.
When she didn't show up to work, they immediately began to get nervous because they're like, this isn't like her, and it's not like her to not answer her phone when they're calling.
My mom's always on time at work, so when she didn't show up, they just knew something was wrong.
The 2 women decide to make the 30-mile drive from Orlando to Sarah's house in the neighboring town of Deltona.
When they knock on the door, Sarah's daughter opens the door.
Hey, sweetie. Your mom at home?
No, I think she left for work.
She says that when she woke up, Sarah was gone.
Why, is everything all right?
Well, we must have passed her on the road.
They didn't want to upset Sarah's kids when it might turn out to be nothing, so they didn't say anything about how worried they were.
Though as they drove back to the hospital, their worry turned to fear.
They keep calling Sarah on her cell phone, and it just keeps going to voicemail. They get more and more worried every time they call.
Then, as they pass through Longwood, their fear turns to panic.
As they are heading back to the hospital, they see all of these blue and red lights, law enforcement, EMTs there, and they began to have a very sick feeling in their stomach.
Fearing the worst, the two women pull over to see if all the emergency vehicles have anything to do with their missing friend.
Both women got out of the car, and they ran up and they began talking with law enforcement.
And they identified that they're looking for a friend named Sarah Rucker.
Police recognize the name Sarah Rucker as the owner of the vehicle.
So at that point in time, what law enforcement did is they asked for these two young ladies to identify the body.
Very sorry, but we do need your help.
Despite their shock, Holly and Casey do reveal what could be a vital piece of information for detectives.
Is there anyone we can call? Any next of kin?
The kids and Wayne. She's technically still married.
They were still married, but separated, and they didn't live together.
He actually's been dating this new girl named Allison.
Had detectives just uncovered a dangerous love triangle.
An estranged husband, a murdered wife, and a new girlfriend. Suddenly, there were red flags flying everywhere.
Detectives feel like there's a lot more to the story than they realize.
On the morning of August 29, 2011, detectives have positively identified 42-year-old Sarah Rucker as the victim of a brutal homicide. Now comes the difficult task of notifying her family.
I got a call from the counseling services telling me to go to their office. And it just had me sit down and was like, you need to call your brother. So I called him and he's like, Mama, they found her in Longwood. So I'm like, what do you mean found her? And he said, she's dead.
They've also learned that Sarah Rucker has a potentially complicated relationship with her husband, 41-year-old Wayne White.
Sarah's friends just told detectives that while they were still technically married, Sarah and Wayne were actually separated.
In fact, according to Sarah's coworkers, the couple had separated a year earlier, mostly over financial issues.
When we first moved to Deltona, he was around a lot, definitely around a lot, but probably like 2009, my mom was getting kind of fed up with being the only one really doing everything. Everything fell on her shoulders and she was getting tired of it.
That led to arguments and different disagreements.
They would usually just fight about money, about him not providing like he was supposed to. That was the main issue.
You need to get yourself together.
I'm trying. What do you want me to do? I know.
They haven't been paid.
What do you want me to do?
It was a disappointment to him to not be able to really have an upholding career, especially with having his, children looking up to him, and to know that, your kids can't really say, I want to be like you when I grow up. So that did, bother him.
After over 2 decades together, the couple decided to call it quits, and Wayne moved out.
Eventually, Wayne chose to leave the marital home. They never actually fully reconciled after his leaving the home.
It was pretty unofficial, but we kind of knew that my dad wasn't going to come back.
Sarah's coworkers tell police that after the separation, Wayne met another woman named Allison.
They start to date, and he eventually moves into her home, and they start to have their own separate life apart from Sarah and the children.
Detectives make the 30-mile drive to Orlando to speak with Wayne.
We weren't sure yet that he was a solid suspect, but that's something we got to follow up on. We need to find Wayne White.
Wayne White?
Yeah.
We're here about your wife, Sarah.
I heard about what happened. Everybody's been blowing up my cell phone. Just awful.
You mind if we ask you a few questions?
No, not at all.
He was actually very calm and relaxed, answered all of their questions.
We understand that you and Sarah are separated. Yeah, we were. It was my fault, actually.
Wayne was pretty honest about his role in the downfall of their marriage. He knew he was to blame.
Yeah.
Wayne fully admits the last time he had contact with Sarah was just hours before her body was found.
He said straight up that he had been at his ex-wife's home earlier that day in the early morning hours.
What time exactly? Around 1, 2 o'clock. I went over there to talk to my son, my oldest. He's 17. He stays up late.
Wayne says he didn't intend to wake up the rest of the household, but things didn't go as planned.
Wayne told detectives that the family's dog woke Sarah up, and she wasn't very happy about it.
Wayne, what are you doing here? Do you know what time it is?
Sorry, I wasn't thinking.
Wayne doesn't deny the squabble, but is adamant he had nothing to do with Sarah's death.
Wayne says that he went home after the fight and he hasn't seen Sarah since.
Can anybody vouch for you? Sure, my son can. He was there.
That afternoon, detectives sit down with the couple's son. The 17-year-old is still processing the news of his mother's murder.
Dwayne Jr. was really in a tough situation. His mother's dead, and he's talking to law enforcement about what he had seen in the early morning hours.
They obviously wanted to know the dynamic of what was going on because it puts everything in context.
The distraught teen does his best to tell detectives about everything he witnessed that morning.
Dwayne Jr. just laid it out, what happened.
Wayne and Sarah's son essentially confirmed what his father had told detectives about going over to the house.
Diesel, hush!
My brother told me, like, Diesel was barking up a storm.
When he looked out the window, he had noticed his father walking up the sidewalk. So he opened the door.
Yeah, my mom walked in. She was pretty upset. And they got into a heated argument. And things got pretty intense.
My mom told him that he needed to go, and my dad wasn't trying to hear that.
I just want to talk.
Dad, it's okay.
Don't you start.
His dad told him you need to butt out. This isn't your business.
The couple's son says his father did leave, but not without a fight.
Listen, I cannot have you coming around here at 2 in the morning. I gotta go to work.
Well, go to bed then. Go on.
Oh my God, I'm about to call the police.
Go.
She threatened to call 911.
Hello?
That's when my dad pushed my mom down. He took her phone.
Stop, Wayne, stop!
It was the phone that she had for work, and he left.
Wait, she talked to the police? She tried, but he took the phone and left.
After talking to the couple's son, detectives contact the Volusia County Sheriff's Department, the precinct in Sarah's hometown of Deltona.
Police get these recordings from the 911 dispatch.
She made 3 phone calls to 911 trying to get them there because of what was going on.
The first of the calls lines up with what Sarah's son described to detectives.
You can clearly hear Sarah saying, "Stop, Wayne, I'm calling the police."
The next 2 calls came a few minutes later from a different number.
She took Dwayne Jr.'s phone and proceeded to call the sheriff's department.
Sarah was able to explain to the 911 dispatch operator that her husband had taken her cell phone and left.
There is some urgency in her voice. You know, I have to have this, I have to have this, I'm gonna lose my job. She was desperate.
My mom was on call for work, so she really needed that phone. And I know that my dad knew that she really needed that phone.
By the time deputies arrived, Wayne was long gone. However, the 911 recordings do produce an interesting piece of information.
Apparently, Wayne hadn't really come over to talk to his son. That was just an excuse.
I don't know what he was thinking about coming over here at 2 in the morning talking about, "Baby, I need you."
It sounded like, from what Sarah was saying, Wayne was begging her to take him back.
Even though he had a girlfriend, Allison, he seemed to indicate that he was trying to put his family back together.
Obviously, that made them a bit more suspicious of Wayne since he'd left this out of his initial statement.
But it also puts someone else on detectives' radar.
Now detectives want to know, had Allison somehow gotten wind of Wayne's attempt at reconciliation?
Hey, what?
This might have triggered her to perhaps become jealous or upset.
If there was a love triangle going on, it may have gone very wrong.
Detectives have just learned that hours before 42-year-old Sarah Rucker was found murdered, the mother of 4 had an altercation with her estranged husband, Wayne White.
Several hours before Sarah Rucker was killed, she had placed a call to 911 about her husband. He had shown up at her residence and an argument had taken place.
In the 911 call, Sarah told the operator that they were arguing, partly because Wayne wanted to get back together with her.
The 911 call paints Wayne as a possible suspect, but detectives also wonder about Wayne's current girlfriend, 37-year-old Allison Cartwright.
Jealousy is a powerful motivating factor, and so they were concerned that with Wayne seeking to reconcile, that if Allison somehow had knowledge of that, that could have been a motive for her to try to kill Sarah Rucker.
On August 30th, barely 24 hours after Sarah's murder, detectives bring Allison in for questioning.
So, what was your relationship like with Sarah?
I was living with her husband, so we weren't exactly friends.
Allison admits to the police that she and Sarah didn't get along at all.
However, according to Allison, that doesn't make her a killer.
Allison was pretty straight up that she had no love for Sarah Rucker, but that she didn't have any anger or hatred toward her that would have led her to kill her.
So did it bother you that Wayne wanted to get back together with her?
What would give you that idea?
Allison said that she had no knowledge of any attempts to reconcile between Wayne and his ex-wife.
That's what Sarah said.
Well, Sarah's lying. The only reason why she and Wayne didn't divorce was because of the kids.
The detectives couldn't help but notice that Allison did sound more than a little touchy about Sarah.
They're not convinced yet that she's being totally forthcoming with them.
Where were you last night?
I was at home.
Can anyone confirm that?
Yes. Wayne was there.
Allison gave police an alibi that she had been home all evening with Wayne.
Allison says, I didn't have anything to do with this.
But at this point, Allison and Wayne just had each other as alibis, and that was not strong enough.
But for the moment, there's nothing for them to hold Allison on.
They thought they might have had a motive, but they really did not have enough concrete evidence to actually charge Allison with the murder.
Later that day, detectives received Sarah's autopsy reports.
The official cause of death was multiple stab wounds and cut wounds to her neck.
She died from loss of blood due to having her throat slit. It was at least 11 slashed wounds into the major arteries.
The most severe cut was 6.5 inches long, 2 inches wide, and it severed her esophagus and carotid artery.
The depth of the cuts also gives detectives clues about the nature of the attack on Sarah.
They determined that the murder weapon was more than likely a pocket knife. And this led investigators to believe that this was not a planned murder. In fact, the murder weapon was probably on them at the time.
The results of Sarah's autopsy also reveal she hadn't been sexually assaulted either.
She'd been found naked from the waist down, but now it seemed that this was something her killer staged to try and throw detectives off track.
To detectives, this all suggests Sarah likely knew her killer.
Stranger-type situations don't typically lead into that type of injuries with a victim of a stabbing.
When you look at the types of injuries that Sarah Rucker had on her neck, it was pretty clear that someone was extremely angry with her.
Police believe they have the suspect list narrowed down to 2 people.
Law enforcement at that point faced the dilemma of trying to figure out whether it was Allison or Wayne.
Either Wayne was enraged that Sarah rejected his attempt at reconciliation, or Allison killed Sarah out of jealousy.
Either way, the murder had been preceded by a vicious struggle.
It was pretty clear also from the autopsy that Sarah had tried to put up a fight. There were some superficial cuts to her hands and to her arms.
But does this point toward Wayne? Or does the fact that Sarah was able to fight for so long point to the fact that Allison could have been wielding the knife?
Hoping for clues that could point to the killer, detectives dig into both Wayne and Allison's police records.
Police look into Allison's background, and they can't find a history of violence.
But when the detectives pull Wayne's rap sheet, it stops them in their tracks.
They find that he's had a violent history for almost 20 years.
His criminal history tended to show that he had a propensity of violence.
This is a violent man.
Maybe those old demons rose again.
Detectives investigating the murder of 42-year-old Sarah Rucker have just uncovered that her estranged husband, Wayne White, has a checkered past.
When they look into Wayne's background, they realize that he has a track record of violent attacks.
Dwayne had committed an aggravated battery. He also had a couple aggravated assault cases, one of which his brother had to stop him from shooting his roommate. These were more than 10 years between those convictions and this event.
The first incident of domestic violence was when she was pregnant with their first child, and Wayne hit her across the head with a wine bottle.
Though Sarah had reported the incident, she'd also decided to give Wayne a second chance.
She took him back, but then he did it again and again for years.
Through the years, there were numerous incidents where Sarah would call law enforcement after Wayne had struck or hurt her.
Sitting down with Sarah's family, detectives learn more about the cycle of abuse.
It'll be good for a little bit, and then it'll be another fight. One time he put a gun to her before. He strangled her one time. I came home from school and she had like abrasions on her neck. It was taking its toll on my mom mentally and physically, doing that, then it's like a matter of time before you pull the trigger.
Honestly, I don't know how she did it. Kept a brave face for that long.
We came out of a broken family, so I guess she didn't want her family like that.
She just didn't want to have us grow up without a dad.
In fact, Sarah's family reveals that Sarah could have called the police far more than she did.
My mom tried to avoid calling 911. She was a really private person. So she didn't want, the police officers showing up at the house and the neighbors seeing everything going on.
But I guess she just couldn't take it anymore.
My mom never told me that, I said he had to go. It's like they were arguing really bad, and then my dad left for a couple of days, and he came with a friend and took the TVs off the wall, and that was it. As far as me and my siblings knew, it was just, all right, I guess that was the big one, the big fight that made them really just go separate ways.
Though according to Sarah's loved ones, it wasn't the end of Wayne's harassment.
Sarah, open the door!
He'd show up drunk or whatever, all times of the day and night, expect her to just come out and talk with him and do whatever.
Sarah, open the door now!
He would come and just creep into the house sometimes. She was doing everything on her own. He couldn't take that. He didn't want to see my mom move on. Didn't want to see her happy without him.
Combing through his record, investigators stumble upon one incident in February of 2011, some 6 months before her murder, that sends chills down their spines.
Wayne had grabbed her as she sat in the vehicle, choking her around the neck.
I don't know what happened. I just saw the marks on her neck.
After that incident, a warrant was issued for Wayne's arrest.
That warrant had never been served, though.
Volusia County had been trying to catch him, and they had not been able to do so.
Wayne was able to avoid capture, largely because he lived in a different jurisdiction.
Every time she calls, Dwayne hops on I-4 and gone. He's out of the county. It's frustrating for law enforcement because they can't catch him there.
I did feel let down because the police show up after my dad's already halfway to Orlando. And that's happened time and time again.
Detectives are determined to prevent Wayne from harming anyone else. There's just one problem.
According to Sarah's 911 call, her son and the cops that showed up at her house that night, Wayne left after his fight with Sarah.
How did Sarah end up dead a few hours later and 20 miles away?
Hoping to learn more about that night, police issue a warrant for the family's cell phone records.
Crime scene techs were able to track the locations of the cell phones for both Wayne, Dwayne Jr., as well as his ex-wife, Sarah Rucker. And they were able to see exactly where all 3 phones had gone during the course of the early morning hours of August 29th.
As he told detectives, it does appear that Wayne had gone home after the fight.
We see his phone traveling out of Deltona all the way down to near his home in Orlando.
The records also appear to confirm that Wayne had taken Sarah's phone.
The cell phone records showed that Sarah's phone arrived at Wayne's girlfriend's house, Allison's house, at about 2:47 a.m.
However, According to the phone records, Sarah had called Wayne 45 minutes later using her son's phone.
Around 3:32 a.m., Wayne's phone got a call from Dwayne Jr.'s phone, which we know was in Sarah's possession.
The call lasted for 9 minutes.
The investigators believe that Sarah may have been trying to convince Wayne to return her phone.
Sarah really needed a cell phone for work, so she was really desperate to get it back.
After that call, cell towers track Wayne's phone leaving Orlando and heading toward the Longwood exit off Interstate 4.
We also got the same type of records with Dwayne Jr.'s phone, and it's showing it going to that same location.
Around 3:46 a.m., Wayne's phone is in the area of the sandwich shop where Sarah Rucker's body would ultimately be found.
August 31st, 2011. It's been 48 hours since Sarah Rucker's body was discovered outside a Longwood, Florida restaurant. Detectives believe they have finally identified her killer, Sarah's estranged husband, Wayne White.
When they pull their records, detectives learn that Wayne and Sarah had met up at the scene of the crime roughly an hour before the murder.
And this is really the turning point of the investigation.
Detectives waste no time bringing Wayne in for a second interview.
So they brought him in to the station to confront him with all of the information they had.
So we had some things come up since we last talked.
And as before, Wayne seemed more than willing to cooperate with investigators.
Detectives asked him if he had taken her phone, and he said yes.
Why?
I wanted to see who she was talking to. You know, some of those guys, I don't trust around my kids.
Wayne tells investigators that Sarah has been texting several other guys.
Wayne indicated to law enforcement that text messages that she had exchanged with other guys seemed to indicate to him that there was some type of arguments going on.
Given what detectives know about Wayne's abuse towards Sarah, they're suspicious of his concern.
So what'd you do with the phone? I threw it away. I got mad when I saw the text. I tossed it out the window while I was driving home.
You sure about that?
The cell phone record, you see him traveling back into Seminole County and her traveling from Volusia County to where they end up in the same location.
We know you met her in Longwood.
No.
So were you planning to kill her, or did it just happen?
I'm more a lawyer.
That was when he said he didn't want to talk anymore.
With the interview over, detectives take Wayne into custody.
When I officially found out that he had been arrested and charged with the murder, it was like it all just clicked. Nobody else would want to do that to my mom except for him.
Officials are confident they've got the right man. But is it enough to secure a conviction?
The case is still what we would consider a circumstantial case.
You're trying to stress that it's impossible that somebody else did this. They ended up getting a warrant to search the house. They were looking for his knife because they obviously thought it would be blood.
The search proves disappointing, though detectives do sniff out what appears to be another clue.
What law enforcement did notice was the strong smell of bleach once they entered the home. And they also saw an empty bottle of bleach that was on a bathroom counter.
The smell of bleach was significant to them because, you know, obviously people use bleach to try to cover up and clean up blood and other type of evidentiary items.
On October 20th, 2014, Wayne's trial gets underway. However, it's clear from the beginning that prosecutors will have an uphill battle on their hands.
There wasn't an eyewitness. There was no murder weapon. It was not necessarily the strongest case that I've ever seen.
Though in their opening statements, prosecutors argue that what they do have should be more than enough.
He had the means, motive, opportunity to commit the crime. All these factors point to him, and there's no factors that point to anybody else. And therefore, it must be him.
The proof, according to the prosecution, lies in both Wayne and Sarah's phone records.
She was on call, and she needs to answer the phone and be able to go and to perform her duties as needed by the hospital.
Wayne, it's me. You know I need that phone.
I just got home. I can meet you somewhere.
Wayne had used Sarah's cell phone as bait to lure her away from her home.
He, I guess, told her where to meet.
Once they were in that parking lot, that they started arguing again, and then another fight ensued.
I'm tired of this crap, Wayne. Give it to me.
Why you always giving me a hard time?
Give me the phone back.
Why you always giving me a hard time?
Give me the phone back.
You always giving me a hard time.
Give it to me.
The defensive wounds found on Sarah's hands also gave investigators a clue as to the type of weapon used: a pocket knife.
She eventually was overcome. What happened with her pants and all that, I don't know. That's always been a mystery. I know law enforcement felt that he did that to debase her.
He may have also been trying to make her murder look like it was the result of a sexual assault.
Prosecutors assert that once Sarah was dead, Wayne left her there and drove home. When it's the defense's turn, Wayne takes the stand to give his own account of what occurred that night.
It was very surreal. He turned to me and mouthed, "I love you."
Then he stuns the court with a shocking admission.
He admits that he was planning to meet with Sarah at the sandwich shop.
That he had gone to the restaurant to give Sarah her phone back.
Though Wayne claims that when he got there, he made a horrifying discovery.
He tried to say that when he got to my mom, she was already dead.
He said, I came there to meet with her and I found her body and then I got scared.
His concern was that because there had been the prior argument, because of the fact that he had had prior arrests for domestic violence, that no one would believe that it wasn't him.
According to the defense, things had played out exactly as Wayne had predicted.
The defense attorney argues that Wayne was unfairly targeted by the police.
However, it's an argument that ultimately falls flat with the jury.
He was found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder.
The first-degree conviction makes Wayne eligible for the death penalty, an outcome that suits some of Sarah's family.
Killed my sister. You know, you don't deserve to live.
However, the thought of a death sentence doesn't sit well with Wayne's children, despite what he did to their mother.
As far as the death penalty, I wasn't really for it. In the victim's impact statement, I told them that, you know, for some reason, all of us, my siblings, like, it's still that little bit of love that's there for some odd reason, because not everything was bad in the home. I do have good memories.
Kiara and her siblings' call for mercy does little to stay the jury's hand, though.
8 recommended death, 4 recommended life without parole. And the judge went ahead and accepted that recommendation and issued a death sentence for Wayne.
Since that happened, the law changed and we were gonna have to retry the death penalty portion of the case. So we decided to just take a life sentence instead of retrying the death penalty part.
As a result, Wayne will be spending the rest of his life in prison.
He won't be getting out. He will die it.
I did want him to be in prison forever. He took our innocence. Like, we had to grow up super fast when he took my mom. It's just so much stuff that we needed her here for, that any child would need their mother for, and we just didn't have it.
However, despite the tragic loss, Sarah's children have thrived.
The oldest daughter graduated from college. She's a pharmacist now. The oldest son, he played football and he was in the Coast Guard.
Though for all their success, not a day goes by without them thinking of their mother and all that she meant to them.
There's plenty of things that I wish I could tell my mom or show my mom, or, you know, like, I wonder what type of grandmother she would be to my son. I want everyone to know that Sarah Yvonne Rucker was just an all-around awesome person who would do anything for anyone in need, that she loved her children. She would do anything for us.